Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a story that is just incredibly influential, the narrative of Adam and Eve. Now, whether you know this story by heart or you're coming to it entirely fresh, we are going straight to the source material. We're going to trace exactly how this ancient text maps out the origins of human suffering, the psychology of temptation, and ultimately a really profound promise of restoration.
And that brings us to the core question of our analysis today. How did humanity lose a perfect paradise? And what does this ancient text say is the only way to get it back? It's a massive, high-stakes question, right? So we'll be impartially tracing this journey from absolute perfection all the way to profound brokenness. And then we'll look at the roadmap the text provides for ultimate redemption. Let's get started.
Section 1, Creation of Eden and Adam.
Chronologically, right after God creates the heavens and the earth, the text actually slows down dramatically. It shifts away from this grand cosmic creation to a meticulous three-step process for making the first human. Step 1, God forms Adam using dust from the ground, which is a highly physical, grounded image. Step 2, God breathes the breath of life directly into him. And step 3, as a result of that breath, Adam becomes a living being. So, right from the start, humanity is presented as this unique bridge between the physical earth and divine spirit.
Once Adam is formed, God places him in just the perfect setting, the Garden of Eden. According to the text, this was a beautiful, lush paradise planted directly by God, absolutely overflowing with all kinds of trees. But, and this is a really important detail to note, Adam wasn't just put there to lounge around all day. The text is very clear that he was given a specific active purpose. He was placed in the garden to work it and to protect it. Paradise, at least in this ancient view, actually involved meaningful labor and stewardship.
Section 2, the First Command and Eve. So, with a setting established, the text outlines the strict rules of paradise. God plants two very specific trees right in the center of the garden. First, you have the tree of life. Adam was given full permission to eat freely from this one, and honestly, almost every other tree there. But then, there's the tree of knowledge of good and evil. This one was strictly forbidden. God issues a definitive warning here. Eating from this specific tree will inevitably bring about death. The boundary is set, and it's crystal clear.
Next up, the narrative details a truly fascinating sequence of events. God states that it is not good for man to be alone and decides to make a helper suitable for him. So first, God creates all the majestic animals and birds, bringing them to Adam to see what he'll name them. Adam names the whole lot, yet among that vast array of beasts, no true equal or partner is found. So God puts Adam into a deep sleep. He takes one of Adam's ribs and meticulously creates a woman. Upon waking up, Adam names her Nari, which translates to woman, specifically acknowledging that she was taken out of man.
The text uses this precise moment to lay down a foundational definition of marriage, stating, "This is why a man leaves his father and mother and is united to his wife, and they become one flesh." The source material also notes a deeply significant detail here that we can't skip over. Adam and Eve were entirely without clothes, yet they felt absolutely no shame. The text implies their pure state and God's glory completely covered them. There was literally zero room for insecurity or fear.
Section 3, Temptation and the Fall. Of course, the perfect harmony of Eden is interrupted. Enter the serpent, described as the most cunning beast possessed by Satan. The serpent approaches Eve and starts questioning God's command. When Eve clarifies the rule, the serpent strikes with a direct, calculated contradiction. "You will not surely die. God knows that when you eat from it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God." You see what he does there? He completely twists God's protective warning into an accusation that God is somehow holding out on them.
And this leads us to the absolute climax of the narrative. Eve looked at the fruit, saw that it was beautiful, and desired the wisdom the serpent promised. So she crossed the boundary. She ate the fruit and then gave some to Adam, who also ate. Immediately, the text says their eyes were opened, but definitely not in the glorious way they expected. Instead, they recognized their nakedness. The holy, glorious presence of God that previously covered them departed, and for the very first time they felt the crushing weight of shame.
Now, to understand why this ancient story actually matters to us today, we have to look at a core theological concept here, which is separation. The text argues that disobeying God causes his pure spirit to distance itself from humanity. It directly connects our modern-day struggles, our feelings of spiritual emptiness, right back to this original pattern of disobedience in Eden.
Section 4,
confrontation, and the curses.
Following the disobedience, the scene gets incredibly tense. God is walking through the garden, but the couple? They're now hiding in fear. What follows is a pretty tragic chain of deflection, the ultimate blame game. God calls out, "Where are you?" Adam answers, admitting he hid because he was afraid and naked. God immediately asks the piercing question, "Did you eat from the forbidden tree?" And instead of taking responsibility, Adam blames Eve. He even subtly blames God, referring to her as the woman you gave me. God then turns to Eve, and she passes the blame right down to the serpent for deceiving her. It just tragically illustrates how the immediate aftermath of the fall completely broke down the previously perfect relationships between God, man, and woman.
Because of this rebellion, God hands down a pretty dense block of curses. The serpent is cursed to crawl on its belly, and God prophesies that the woman's offspring will eventually crush its head. The woman is told she'll experience greatly increased pain in childbirth, and the man is told the ground is now cursed, he's going to endure painful toil just to eat, waiting for his survival until he eventually returns to the dust. The text explicitly links these ancient punishments to the mortality and the hard, painful work that we still experience today.
Section 5. Banishment and Ultimate Hope.
This brings us to a conclusion that balances, honestly, a devastating loss with a massive promise. The immediate physical consequence is severe, permanent exile. God casts them out, placing fiercely guarding cherubim and flaming swords right at the entrance. But, and this is key, the text explains this intense security was actually a measure of mercy. It was to prevent fallen humanity from eating from the tree of life and living forever in an eternally broken, separated state.
You see, this single event builds into the overarching theological story of the whole source material. It starts in Eden with perfect communion, then plummets into the fall and separation. But the text explains that God ultimately sent his Son to provide redemption, pointing toward a final stage we see later in the book of Revelation, a promised return to paradise. The source material beautifully ties the very beginning of the Bible directly to the very end. It cites the book of Revelation, where a divine call is issued to the church to repent and return to their first works. There is a really stern warning not to lose your first love for the divine. But accompanying that warning is a breathtaking promise that those who are victorious, those who remain faithful, will once again be granted the right to eat from the tree of life in God's paradise. The entire epic comes full circle.
And that leaves us with a final, really thought-provoking question. According to the text, the path back to the tree of life requires returning to our first love and walking in obedience. So, are we ready to heed that ancient warning today? The text challenges us to look at the loss of paradise, not just as some ancient myth, but as a mirror reflecting our own choices, and ultimately an invitation to seek the restoration that's waiting at the end of the journey.